Hello, gals and guys. It's your host, Phil Larson, and this is your motivational high five on transitions. Let's do this. Hello, my friends. Thank you for joining me. Lately, I've had several really good ratings and reviews on the podcast on iTunes. Thank you so much. I read all those reviews, and I take those to heart, and I greatly appreciate those. Also, there's another app that people use to get their podcast. It's called Podbean, and I just found where they place the comments, and there's comments going back a couple of years that I went back and just read them all. I was like, oh, here they are. And man, I am just so floored by all your encouraging words. I take those to heart. Thank you so much, and I so appreciate it. Right into transitions today, and it seems appropriate as we're coming to the end of another year. We're getting ready to start a new year, and unfortunately the way the calendar lines up, it's like boom, 1 second you're 1 year, the next second you're another year, and there's no really room for a transition. It's the ending of one thing, it's the starting of a new thing, and I mean, I guess that's how time works. But that's not how we work as humans, and I think we need to take some time to slow down and transition mentally from the ending of an old thing to the beginning of a new thing, because the true thing is, when you lose a job, for instance, it's not like, oh, all of a sudden the next day I have a job. No, there's some transition, or anything like that. Any sort of relationship ending or new thing beginning, there's always a little bit of flux. Even if you have a job lined up and you're quitting a job, you are going through the time of transition with some relationships. There's always transition somewhere, and it can't be so easy and clean cut and black and white, end and start. We are not built to respond to life that way. Some point in there we need to transition. Because we do have this desire to okay, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? Especially when something's coming to an end, we move on mentally. Okay, this is done. What's next? What if instead of asking what's next, what if we ask, how was this thing that I'm finishing? How was it? How did I do? How am I doing now? How can this move from one thing to the next? My wife and I were both on staff at a church one time in our lives, and when that ended, we were laid off, and we learned a few things, in particular philosophies around ministry, and about how a certain level of openness with a certain kind of person can feel good at the time, but be harmful in the end. And that there's some wisdom protecting the most sacred parts of who you are against a certain type of people or scenarios. We also learned in that kind of whole thing is, to recognize fairly standard warning signs of unhealthy behavior among people that you're the closest with. And we've carried those things we learned on into the next thing, but that didn't come without a period of transition and reflection. When we ask, how was this thing, which we really had to do to move on because it happened so suddenly, when we do that, we glean something that adds wisdom to the next thing. So we should really do that. And this time between the old thing and the new thing, this transition phase, the phase that bridges those two things, should include reflection on the thing ending, some mourning even, some letting go, and some saying goodbye to what was and what you hoped would be and just wasn't. It never was. You have to mourn that. And when you've done that, and that's the most important thing, because then you are more able and more free once you say goodbye to the old thing to welcome the new thing. And so the other part of the transitional phase is to outline your hopes and dreams and areas of growth for the new thing, and hopefully incorporate that in some sort of response or action that says hello, that welcomes a new thing that is coming. One of the things I really enjoy about this podcast and about putting myself out there is things just tend to happen that seem like pretty amazing, either coincidence or stuff that's just supposed to happen. This stuff was already on my mind. And then I get an email from a guy named Istvan. And Istvan says, "Dear Phil, I recently started listening to podcasts about productivity, planning, self-help, etc., and found yours. I was wondering if you were planning to do an episode around the theme of year planning and closing, mainly about how people should close, recap, plan, and this whole topic. And then he goes on to say this thing that he's a part of, this big project that's been going on for a few years and has really caught fire. It's called Year Compass. And I looked it up. yearcompass.com is a free download workbook. And people hashtag this everywhere and are doing this workbook. It's amazing. It's pretty cool. It takes you through the last year. It kind of helps you outline, the victories and the misses of 2018 or whatever year you're listening to this at the end of the year, and how we need to say goodbye to some of those things and let some of those things go. And it helps you plan out your next year. And if this is something you want to do as you're coming to the end of this year and you're looking back, and you're saying, all the mixed bag that was this last year and everything that you hope for the next year, as this time changes from an end of one thing to the beginning of a new, this transitional time, take this exercise, yearcompass.com. And it's just it's not even that big of a notebook or anything, but it helps you sort through the last year and plan for the next. And in my conversation with him, over email, I brought up over the last 3 years, I've been setting new themes for the year. Instead of setting unattainable for me New Year's resolutions, I've taken on themes. So 2016 was no more seething resentment. 2017 was acceptance. 2018 was proactivity over worry. And right now I'm kind of in that transition of, in conversation as well, of mourning where I didn't do that very well. I let worry get the best of me a lot of times this year. And I feel like I learned a lot from the theme, but I also feel like I fell short a lot of the time of my theme, and that's okay. So I'm saying goodbye, and I'm getting ready to try on a new theme. And I have been trying it on from time to time over the last month. And it was Let It Go. Because personally, I struggle with some perfectionism and control issues, and if someone isn't doing something the way that I would do it, I might let them know in a passive-aggressive way or get really frustrated about it. But I'm changing it from Let It Go to Let It Be, because Let It Go kind of has this negative connotation to it, kind of like a scolding of Phil. Stop it, just let it go. But Let It Be is allowing something to have both good and bad qualities to it. Though I may not agree with something someone is doing, there could be a possibility of something that is good about it that I don't quite see yet. And so I can just let it be. I don't have to assign a definition to it. And so I can, so right now in this transition phase, I'm celebrating and hoping for good things with that theme. And I need an action of saying hello to it. And so I think I'm going to post kind of in my car or, a piece of paper that just says, let it be. Just start to welcome in this new mindset of, hey, just let it be. I don't need to control it. I don't need to fix it. I can let it be. Of course, there are unhealthy things that need some attention. But a lot of this stuff that I struggle with are real minute, nuanced things and interactions that I can just let go. Just let it happen. Let it be and not try to fix. So during this holiday season, where, some of us have some extended time off of work and at home, let it be a time of slowing down, of reflection over the last year, of maybe mourning some things and saying goodbye to some things. Let it lead you to conversation with your loved ones or your spouse or your mentors, and reflect on the last year and hope and plan and celebrate the coming of a new year. And what action can you take to help usher in the new thing? We're in a transitional time right now in our lives, as we all are during this time of year. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. And sometimes during the holiday season, we get reminded of things we used to have and now we don't. And we get reminded of things that we do have that we didn't. And it's a mixed bag, and that's okay. How can you, in your certain particular, very specific circumstance and situation, not like anybody else's, how can you tune in to this time of transition? As we transition out of this episode, will you tune in with me to an affirmation, a phrase that we repeat to ourselves as a way to rewire our brains? We talk about this in previous episodes, and I hope that you listen to previous episodes so we can be on the same page. Give it a try. I think you'll like it. And the affirmation, when we find a reflection of ourselves, we say it to ourselves in the first person as an action, as a transition from an old thing ending maybe to a new thing beginning, a new way of thinking, a positive way of thinking, some hopes and some dreams, saying hello to something new. We do that when we repeat this affirmation. Will you do this with me? Here we go. Today, I transition with lessons from the old thing into the new. And I think it's important to note, it's not effective to do a lot of these transition moments by yourself. Reach out and find a community, whatever that may look like. You're not meant to be alone, and you don't need to do it perfectly. Just get in the mix. Get in the mix with some people until you find your people. You'll never find them if you don't try. If that could free you, let it free you. But what you do have to do alone is make that decision. No one can make it for you. It's yours to make. It starts with you.